What's going on, everyone? So as of March 8th, we are officially 1 year into Star Wars Unlimited. So we are kind of celebrating with the release of Set 4, which, well, makes sense because we get a release basically every 4 months. We are sitting at just over the anniversary of Star Wars Unlimited. I wanted to take a second just to kind of talk about the state of Star Wars Unlimited. A few things I wanted to talk about with Set 4, and well, looks like it's got some positive feedback so far, as well as a little bit about Set 1, 2, and 3, differences between the feedback on that, and of course, where I think a lot of it succeeded and potentially some things that could be improved upon. With that said, big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon, and also I have a TCG player link in the description down below for any Set 4 card you actually want to pick up. Let's dive in to starting off with Set 4. Okay, Set 4, there has been a significant amount of feedback on Set 4, and there has been a pretty decent increase in popularity, not just in personal experience, but it looks like even with some data that we will kind of check out. Very baseline stuff, nothing too crazy here on this channel for a YouTube video, okay? But overall, just the feedback on Set 4. Now, whether that's because everyone's actually been able to play with the cards on Carabast, or if it's actually just because of the cards themselves, is an interesting question. I don't actually know how many people access Carabast and also are posting their feedback, right? Because one of the big things you have to consider is those people that are online posting feedback and commentating on Set 4 are also probably the people that are able to go out and access the cards online and be able to play online. And one of the things with Set 3 that's a big difference was that early before the set, and even a good while past it, it was a lot more difficult to actually get access to the cards, especially since the biggest fan-made program wasn't actually working at the time for Set 3. So that's something that I do consider. But even outside of that, just in a personal basis, in paper, the Set 4 release has been massively been received way more positively than Set 3. This is the first set really that has kind of been a little bit more abstract. With Set 1, especially with Set 1 and Set 3, we had a specific theme. Set 1 was Galactic Empire and the Rebel Alliance, right? Those are the two we were focusing on. It brought in the Rebels series, it brought in the 3 movies, it brought in kind of the focus of the original Star Wars story, and overall has been, at least in terms of online opinion, as well as sales, as well as search, whether that's the start of the game or simply because of the actual theme, the most popular. Set 2 being significantly more focused on a theme, but outside of a specific story, right? Spark Rebellion was focused on a theme and a story at the same time, which was that war between Galactic Empire and the Rebel Alliance. Set 2 is more focused on just kind of the outskirts, right? Smugglers, bounty hunters, that type of stuff. This was a theme that definitely, out of all of the 4 sets that we have right now, was probably the least exciting for most people. Now, for those select few that are interested in Legends content, or maybe just in general have just enjoyed a lot of Star Wars content, there are a few characters in here, especially if you've been watching current shows like The Mandalorian versus Moff Gideon, that has struck people as potentially interesting. But overall, a lot of people aren't necessarily as invested in the characters, and as we saw with card power and, I guess, quality of the gameplay mechanics, it wasn't nearly as exciting as Set 1, which makes a lot of sense because Set 1 was more of focused on your game being functional in of itself. So it would make sense as a lot of these mechanics were more set specific, and in some cases just, well, too specific or too general, and didn't really fit as nicely as Set 1. Set 3 kind of followed a similar suit as, well, Set 1. Set 3 was focused on a theme and a story. It was highlighting the conflict between Galactic Republic and the Separatists, that storyline. And this is by far, in terms of the modern era, where, you know, you have a lot of people talking about Star Wars, a lot of people's focus on, right? Bad Batch, the story, the Clone Wars series, the prequels in general. This is definitely more current Star Wars. The people who are growing up with Star Wars and were oftentimes, you know, getting into all of the media, well, this is what they were kind of used to. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you weren't also used to the sequels, or I shouldn't say the sequels, but the original trilogy is what I should say, because the prequels and then the original trilogy, if I said sequels, I know some people down there are already flaming me. But this kind of followed suit, right? And it was in that same level of untouchable legend type quality where the original trilogy was core Star Wars content and the prequels just developed that even further. And I would argue that the best pieces of Star Wars media were actually in the prequel era. You know, you're free to disagree with me, but that sentiment really got people excited, including myself, about just the story itself. Now, the overall theme of the sets, the exploits, the coordinate, the mechanics of it, didn't really fit in terms of the cards for the rest of competitive gameplay or just the rest of Premier format, right? It didn't really live up to the power level that set 1 was, not even close, and not even necessarily to set 2. Now, there were a few powerful leaders and some options you could run with, absolutely. But once again, the card quality seemed to be, well, just kind of not there in terms of not being able to fit in. There were a few cards here and there that were just like, okay, this is solid, I'll slot this in as a general utility piece, but there wasn't necessarily something that you could really build a deck around and really focus in on. And then we dive into set 4, which is where the main focus of this video comes in, because we have a set that really feels like the leaders are just random. They're just random, right? These are all over Star Wars, from the prequels to the sequels to the random shows outside of that and series and everything like that. I will say, in terms of just like overall leaders and cards, there is and seems to be a little bit more of the original trilogy type level cards, right? Things like Admiral Akbar, things like Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, that type of stuff. But there's also a bunch of stuff like Major Von Reg and Kazuda and those types of cards where they're kind of on the fringe. And then there's, of course, there's a bunch of stuff related to a lot of series that, well, have come out recently, like things including Asajj, more like, and Thrawn. But the focus here wasn't necessarily on a specific theme in terms of, okay, this is the time period that we're going with, or a storyline, or anything like that. Or even like with set 2, which didn't maybe necessarily follow a narrow theme with the storyline, but even like that was smugglers, bounty hunters. This is more just, they say jump to light speed and starships and pilots. And yes, there are pilots, and most of the leaders' art reflects that. But because a good portion of Star Wars is starships, space battles, and pilots, it didn't really feel like it was restricted by that all that much. And you got a lot of really cool and unique things to play around with because of that. A perfect example of this is something like a Thrawn. And I think this is one of the most favorite leaders that was put out here, not only because the character is so exciting, but also just because of the implications of introducing abilities such as this, where now you are incorporating all the sets and you have a leader that actually really encourages you and cards within that set to build upon it and do some really cool stuff. Same thing with Piet, right? Capital ships. There's capital ships across all sets. This isn't a set specific card. It's extremely general, but not to the point where it doesn't have a theme like Maybe, for example, the set 2 Han, where it just reduced the costs on things, right? You can just play this and, well, build your capital ship deck around it. But a lot of the support from it comes from set 4, and yet there's a lot of powerful pieces from prior sets to fit in, which leads to a lot of fun deck building combinations where you're getting to pull in a bunch of new cards, which may not have been the case with prior sets, and yet filling in the slots with the prior sets, where previously it was more like you were building off of the good decks and then filling in potentially with some new cards. At least that's the feel right now. Whether or not that's going to be the case when set 4 releases is up to your judgment. In terms of actual meta playable decks or meta leaders, that could be options. And, well, I'm sure I'll have a full video on this, but cards like Kazuda or potentially Piet may have an option to be meta competitive decks, but I don't really see these necessarily making big waves, but they are extremely interesting to build around. And that's reflected across a lot of different, well, places online, in person, the attendance of events, and even, which I'm going to jump into now, it looks like interest in terms of online searches. Now, this is just one metric that I use, and I think it's a little bit of a fun one to digest, and it's really easy to. As you can see here, this is just the Star Wars Unlimited search term. This doesn't necessarily have anything too crazy about it. If you select the game here, you'll see, well, also a little bit of specific interest with the game itself. But a lot of people don't necessarily search it through this. They search it through the search term. So, well, I'll leave that for you all to kind of digest. But if we go back and look at that search term, this is what people were searching in Google as time went on. And well, we can actually look at the past 12 months and see the entire history of Star Wars Unlimited. This is release date, right? March 8th. Around this time, we have the peak interest of Star Wars Unlimited. Set 2 being released was quite interesting because Set 2 was extremely hyped, right? One of the big things was, oh my gosh, Set 2 and Set 3, they overprinted a bunch of boxes because Set 1 sold out so quickly and there was no product to be found, that they were kind of having some product issues and the inability to provide a lot of people that were interested in the game the product they wanted, which dropped a little bit of interest, right? And then, of course, comes Set 2 and Set 3. Now we have an overflow of product, right? So they were really messing up the balance of this, but also the biggest problem with that wasn't necessarily like that they overprinted product or that they messed up in that. It was that the hype for Set 2 did not meet consumers' expectations when the set dropped, or rather the expectations didn't match the hype. Set 2 was seen, especially with only Set 1 as kind of our baseline, as going to be this absolutely insane, extremely fun, and extremely well-built set. And a lot of people felt as this is the worst and significantly worse than Set 1. And I know personally a bunch of people and in my own store that just kind of dropped the game for the most part when Set 2 came out. Whether that was the style, whether that was just the cards, from my experience, it has been really the card mechanics and the quality of those cards in terms of power level and overall build around potential that really made people drop Set 2. And therefore, that kind of, I guess, mentality shifted towards Set 3, where we saw a little bit of an increase, but not a significant one, because people were kind of let down by Set 2. So they tempered their expectations for Set 3. And although we saw an increase and people did receive Set 3 a good amount more than, or at least more positively than Set 2, it wasn't quite enough to see a huge shift. And then we start seeing the trends. As you can see, there was a steady, pretty much downtrend from Set 2. There was a little bit of spikes for some of the planetary qualifiers and things. But then we get into Set 4. And you could see it's already, in terms of search popularity, more popular than Set 3 already. And that's telling. And who knows, we might see a big drop off, and I'm almost certain that we will, because that's how trading card games work. But this could be the start of the trend for future sets. And with Set 5's name being released, the Legends of the Force, well, we could absolutely see a huge surge in popularity, because that is one of the most, I don't want to say iconic because that's not necessarily true, but one of the most fan exciting, the real big fans, and the something that could really generate some of the most hype you will ever see among Star Wars is diving in to some of the really niche, really unique, and really interesting storylines that Star Wars has to offer that a lot of people don't know, and therefore people just spread hype all over the place. But that's in the future. Whether that set 4 will boost us to that point, we don't know yet. But what I will say is that it's looking pretty good for Star Wars Unlimited. You are going to have situations where sets are not received great, or sets don't really live up to the hype, or sets aren't really all that exciting, or whatever the case may be. But you're also going to have sets that are absolute bangers, right? One of the big things with like Magic the Gathering is you have these sets that are absolutely atrocious. And then they're like, we're going to return to Dominaria, or we're going to return to Lorwyn, which I'm sure those of you that don't play Magic don't even know what I'm talking about. But the reason why they return to those planes, or the return to that theme, is because the hype and the consumer reaction to the set release was so great that they're going to come back for it. And that just goes to show you that, yes, there's going to be poor sets, there's going to be great sets. So this type of trend is not out of the ordinary at all. But the important part about this is that Star Wars Limited has the capability of actually bouncing back with a good set, with a set that is seemingly increasing players' hype and also increasing their enjoyment of the game. Because in reality, even though set 3 did do that to some degree, it hadn't really shown in terms of the data from, well, not only this, but also just in general from your standard, I say F&M usually because, again, it refers to Magic, but your standard events, the popular random community, and the feedback that people have been posting about. Set 4 is a little bit different. Pre-releases have been pretty packed. The overall consumer opinion has been pretty positive, and I haven't really seen all that many complaints. And on top of all that, people are having more fun, or at least sharing that they've been having more fun, which is probably meaning that they've been having more fun in general with set 4. So overall, I am really looking at Star Wars Unlimited and seeing a really awesome future. Now, I know everyone has got something bad to say, and in some cases, some good things to say. And we've got rotation on the horizon. We've got a bunch of new tournaments and competitive events to kind of flush out. We've got some balance issues that happen with set 1, and people still talk about, DJ from set 2 causing issues, and who knows what's going to happen with that. But one thing is absolutely certain is that, well, they're capable of presumably making a fun set. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether or not your cards and your sets are like competitive viable or this, that, or if they're unbalanced. If people are having fun, then people will continue to play the game. There's also one other thing that I wanted to mention, especially with the trend with Star Wars Unlimited, and that is, I'm sure a portion of this is actually excitement for Carbonite boosters. And this is something that I found a little bit surprising, because usually when companies introduce a new monetization method that oftentimes, will cost more for the consumer, it's not received positively. But I have seen almost nothing but good things about the Carbonite boosters. And in terms of my personal opinion, I haven't really had any negatives with it at all. It has been an extremely fun way to collect cards, and has been an extremely fun process to watch people open, especially sharing their serialized cards, especially in my Discord. It's just been a lot of fun. And that also provides a source of longevity for a trading card game. At the end of the day, we are a trading card game. Collectibility is one of the driving factors for longevity in these games. So seeing that be a super exciting factor, unlike Magic the Gathering, by the way, which when they release their collector boosters, and in general, the only thing I've seen about collector boosters has just been pure negative feedback, well, it's a little bit of a breath of fresh air in this game. And I think one of the things about it is that they did do limited stock on it. So it is like a collector chase item, which I wanted to add. So between Carbonite Boosters, Set 4, and overall just the excitement for Set 5, I cannot tell you how many people I know that are just dying to see Set 5. And I am also included in that. Well, I think we're in a pretty good state at the anniversary of Star Wars Unlimited. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about Set 3, 4, 2, 1. And I know I said that completely out of left field. And, well, come on. Star Wars, the movies, it's 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, Rogue One. You know how it is, guys, okay? But let me know what you think in the comment section down below about Star Wars Unlimited and 1 year playing. I know some people that have taken breaks and coming back, but for those of you that are coming back, what brought you back? Is it simply just because of Set 4 or something else? And for those of you that then stuck around for the year, or maybe these videos even, let me know what you think in the comment section down below as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video.